Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're doing a top 10. Topic of this top 10, top 10 needle movers. And what I mean by that, these are the wrestlers that get you to buy tickets, get you to buy merchandise, get you to tune in to watch their specific show. For this, we're just going to be talking about wrestlers that are either full or part-time currently. We're not going to bring any historical needle movers into this because it's so hard to gauge what Bruno Sammartino did versus, let's say, what Steve Austin did or Jim Londos, because the context is all different. And you can look at it like Steve Austin had 10 million people watching it. Well, now we're in a streaming era. 10 million people aren't watching anything on TV. You could look at it like Bruno sold out the Garden more than anybody else. Yeah, but Bruno also had 10 years straight of going to the Garden 13 times a year. No one else is going to do that. So you see what I mean when comparing the eras. So for this, we're just going to talk about current, either part or full-time wrestlers, and where I think they fit. Starting up with number 10, Brock Lesnar. Now, just a couple years ago, Brock would have been on the top of this list. The controversy with the Vince McMahon lawsuits and his part in that, and also the general raising of the quality of everybody else in the company has moved him down a bit. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't think that Brock is going to move the needle greatly when he comes back. I do think we have a little bit of diminishing returns with Brock. The more and more he goes away and comes back, the less impactful it's going to be. And like I said, I don't know how everybody's going to respond. I know there's a certain amount of people that just because he was in the lawsuit don't ever want to see him again, so that puts a little bit of a knock to him. That's why he's so low on the list. Next up, number 9, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, aka MJF. Now, I understand what you're going to say, and you're going to argue that Brock sells more merchandise, he sells more tickets than MJF, but relative to the company they're in, MJF is quite possibly one of the biggest draws that AEW will ever have. He might not sell as much merchandise as other wrestlers, but he's always going to be a constant. He's going to be a guy that if he's in the main event, you pay to see that. If he's on Collision, you're going to tune into Collision. If he's on Rampage, you'll tune into Rampage. He's one of the very few real difference makers that AEW has, hence why he made our list. Now, coming from that, our number 8, another guy that I really consider an AEW needle mover, Swerve Strickland. I put Swerve slightly above MJF just for the fact that Swerve, to me, brings in a different kind of fan. MJF brings your classic wrestling fan. The people that 90% of them most likely would have gave AEW a chance in the first place. Swerve, to me, if used properly, he could be the face of the company. He could be the Stone Cold, the John Cena, the guy that's at every interview opportunity. And I think he has that capability. And I think they've leaned into it. I think we're just scratching the surface. We revisit this in 3 years, Swerve might be number 1. Now going from that, our number 7, Jey Uso. There's a reason why he's called Main Event Jey Uso. And again, you would have asked me just a few years ago, I would have said he would have been nothing but a tag team specialist, but Jay has proven me and a lot of people wrong. Since splitting from the Bloodline, since going off on his own, he's been involved in some of the biggest storylines in WWE. He's moved a ton of merchandise. He's somebody that no matter where he's put on the card, the fans come out for him, they chant with him. The only thing that may be a little bit of a holdback is I believe at some point they need to pull the trigger and get Jay into a championship, a solo championship, whether that be a long run as Intercontinental, whether it be winning the Universal or World Championship. He needs to hold one of those big titles, and he needs to do it quickly before the fans tire of him. We're at such a TikTok, ADHD society that people will move on quickly. And if they don't use Jay correctly, Jay will be a guy that, oh yeah, he was fun for a little bit. He does have that in him, much like I said with Swerve. He could be the top guy in the company if they play their cards right. Next up, number 6, the cult of personality, CM Punk. Whether you love CM Punk or you hate CM Punk, there is no denying he gets more attention than almost any wrestler in the world. I can tell you for myself, if I make a video and CM Punk is in my thumbnail, there's a better chance that that video gets clicked on than one that doesn't have him with the same exact topic. Whether it be his return to AEW, his Survivor Series comeback to WWE, he generates so much of a buzz by just being CM Punk that he has to make this list. And again, I kind of struggle because I did want to put him higher, but as we go up higher on the list, you'll see that the wrestlers that are higher than him, in my opinion, are more important to their company right now. No knock on Punk, he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, but he doesn't quite crack the top 5. Now again, this could change. Speaking of top 5, on number 5, the biggest needle mover in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Tetsuya Naito. Now again, if you would ask me a year ago, 2 years ago, Okada probably would have got a spot on here as well. I think he's been diminished a bit going to AEW. No knock on him, I just don't think he's fully started that big run in AEW yet. But when you go to New Japan and you watch the crowd and you see the crowd reactions, and I watch almost every New Japan show, so I am cognizant of what's happening there. He's a guy that sells the merchandise. He's a guy that when he's in the main event, the show's sold out. When he's on a show, people watch him. The crowd goes nuts for him. Tetsuya Naito may be at the end of his career, but even at the end of his career, he's a bigger attraction than anybody they have in the company right now. He is basically carrying that company on his back until they get some more main eventers up there. But as of right now, he's the guy. That's why he's a needle mover. To go from that, our number 4, one of the guys that they lost in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Will Osprey. Look, I'm going to admit I would have been wrong. If you would have asked me who moved the needle more between Will Osprey and Kazuchika Okada before they came to AEW, I would have said Okada. 1 million times out of a million. No knock on Will Osprey, but what Will has done in AEW is shown a whole nother side of Will Osprey that I don't think I ever seen in New Japan. And that's not saying he wasn't great in New Japan. He has adapted so well to the Western style of wrestling and the promos and everything about that I think people just gravitate to him. He's a big star. That's why he's here. That's why he's I'll go from that on number 3, Rhea Bloody Ripley. Look, I could tell you this as an anecdote. I have friends that know that I'm a wrestling fan that don't necessarily watch wrestling, or they may catch wrestling from here and there. And the one name they always bring up when they talk to me is Rhea Ripley. She has such a look, such a defined character, that you're going to be hard-pressed to find someone that's going to have as big of an impact as her. And she's not even at the top of her game. Rhea Ripley, to me, and this is not a knock, is China, but improved. So let's say China is your high watermark, your superstar woman of all time, which I think she's up there. She's probably the biggest star in women's wrestling ever. To this point, Rhea's even bigger. I think Rhea's a bigger star than Becky Lynch ever was. I think she's bigger than Trish Stratus and Lita. I think she's bigger than Medusa. I think the only people that really could compare to her, maybe Moolah in her time. Maybe if you go to All Japan Women in the 90s, someone like a Bull Nakano or one of the Glamour gals might be up there. But to me, Rhea is going to be a movie star, plain and simple. She's on that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, John Cena trajectory, and that's why she's up here this high on the list. I'll go from that on number 2. One of my personal favorites in all of wrestling, and has been for a very long time. Person that I consider a very nice human being and great with his fans, Cody Rhodes. When the history books are written, even if you take away his return to WWE, Cody Rhodes changed professional wrestling. Now, that's not to say he did it on his own. Jericho was there with him. The Young Bucks were there with him. Kenny Omega was there with him. Tony Khan being the backer. Right place and right time. Cody made that change, though. He is, to me, he is the most important cog in that development of AEW and not becoming a challenger company and there being a second, let's say, global force in pro wrestling. And I didn't mean that on purpose. That's just how it came out. Shout out to you, Jeff Jarrett. But then you bring him back. And I think Cody Rhodes, in his time in WWE, has solidified and put himself in the conversation to be one of the 10 greatest wrestlers of all time. His impact, the merchandise he moves, the fact that he main evented 2 WrestleManias in a row, and they were 2 of the biggest WrestleManias of all time. Most likely he's going to be 3 for 3. He is the guy. He's the guy that all the fans wanted to finish the story. That's why he's up here. That's why he made the list. Now, before we go to our number one, we do a thing here called the best of the rest. Basically, these were things that were considered for the list but didn't quite make it. First, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I know what you're going to say to me. In history, Dwayne is probably one of the top 2 or 3, but we're talking about what you're doing right now. And yes, he does move the needle. I don't think he's as important as he was, say, WrestleMania 28 when he came back for John Cena. The WWE as a company itself is so hot right now. I don't think that there's a big difference in the number of people that are going to tune in to see The Rock that would normally tune in. Of course, there's going to be some lapsed fans that may tune in, but I think what people like Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes, other wrestlers have done in the company, Seth Rollins, what they built, tells me more about their drawing power than it does The Rock. I think if you took Cody Rhodes off of the show, it would have a bigger impact than not having The Rock there. That's why The Rock was considered, but he didn't quite make the list. And my next one, this is more a personal preference and someone I think is really going to move the needle, that we haven't seen her do it yet, but I think she's going to make a big wave in WWE, and that's Julia. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't seen a ton of Julia's work. I've seen a lot of it. I've seen enough to be super impressed. She was never my favorite wrestler in Stardom. I really like Starlight Kid. She is my favorite Stardom wrestler. However, you could not deny Julia's charisma. You can't deny her talent. I think if we revisit this in 2-3 years, Julia may be up close to the Rhea spot, and maybe Rhea and Julia is 1 and 2. And they may have the epic rivalry that goes down in history. They may be the Austin and Rock for this generation. Again, she hasn't done much in America. She did move the needle in Japan. She was thought of for the list, didn't quite make it. Now, before I get to my number one, if you think I put someone too high, put someone too low, left someone off the list altogether, let me know in the comments who you think is one of the biggest needle movers in pro wrestling right now. While you're there, smash the like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. Doing all that definitely helps me out. With that being said, my number one needle mover in pro wrestling right now, put your ones up for the OTC, the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. Roman and the Bloodline storyline, in my opinion, is going to go down as the best storyline in WWE history. I think this is better than Austin vs. McMahon. I think it is better than the Mega Powers. I think it's better than Hogan vs. Piper. I think this is better than the Summer of Punk, and these are all things I love. I'm not saying this as those are negative. I love all of those things. When I talk about wrestling storylines, longevity, drawing power, star power, Roman Reigns is that guy. The only 2 storylines that I would put at a similar level to this right now, and one of them falls off greatly at the end, which is probably better than the Sting versus the NWO build-up to Starrcade 97. Even though it fizzled at the end, that build-up to me is still so great that makes that an all-time storyline. Dusty Rhodes and his ongoing war with the Horsemen, another all-time great. My favorite storyline of all time, and I might just be biased, I don't think that this has quite got there yet, is Raven versus Tommy Dreamer in ECW. I do think that the Bloodline is right there with it, though. The twists, the turns, everything with Jay and Jimmy Uso, with Sami Zayn, with Solo, with the Gorillas of Destiny, which I don't think they're allowed to call him that there, with Jacob Fatu, the guys coming in and out, the Ulafala. Think about this. They've managed to make things like the Ulafala, CM Punk's bracelet, as important as championships. And that harkens back in the day, where a feud can get started with something as simple as someone winning a trophy and the heel destroying the trophy. This whole thing, this whole story, everything about Roman, yes, it took him a long time to get there, and yes, when he was being forced down our throats as a babyface, I was totally out. I cashed out on him. I didn't think he was ever going to get to that level. The second he turned heel, the second he became the Tribal Chief, the second the Bloodline story came into it, he made himself the biggest star in pro wrestling. In my opinion, he is the number one needle mover. He's a guy most responsible for making WWE as hot as it is right now. That's why he's my number one. With all that being said, like I said previously, if you think I left someone off, put someone too high, too low, let me know in the comments. Leaving a comment definitely helps us out. There's a reason why YouTubers ask you to do that. All the likes, the comments, the shares, That really helps the algorithm. It helps us to grow our base. So if you like what I do, please leave a comment. Even if you just put comment, please leave something there. If you don't like it, let me know what you don't like. Let me know what you may think would be better for me to do for the next video. I'm always up for suggestions. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Heel Heat.